Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, Section 32. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, A Midsummer Ramble Through the Dolomites, by Amelia B. Edwards. Chapter 13. Forno di Zoldo and Zoppe, Part 2. The mules are brought round early next morning, for we have a long day before us. Zoppe, distant rather more than 3 hours from Forno di Zoldo, has to be visited in the morning, and at 2 p.m. on our way back we have promised, in compliance with Signora Pezzi's particular request, to call upon her married daughter, who lives at Pieve di Zoldo, about a quarter of an hour above Forno. While we are at breakfast, it being a little after 5 a.m., the church bells ring out a merry peal. Concluding that it is either a saint's day or a wedding, I inquire what the joyful occasion may be, and learn, not without surprise, that an old and highly respected inhabitant has just given up the ghost. The Val di Zoppe, sometimes called the Val di Ritorto, branches away from the Val di Zoldo at an acute angle from a point a little way below Forno, and runs off northward towards the Pelmo. Our way thither lies at first through a chain of villages, Campo, Pieve, Dozza, Pra, and Bragarezza. Passing Pieve, we are met by Cesare Pezzi, who is to take us to the studio of a certain self-taught wood sculptor named Valentino Gamba. He lives at Bragarezza, a miserable, tumble-down hamlet on a steep hillside a mile or two farther on, where we first catch sight of him sitting in a desponding attitude on the doorstep of a small cottage. Being addressed by young Pezzi and invited to show his studio, he jumps up in red confusion and leads the way into a little back room, where stands an enormous oval frame of carved pine wood, destined for the Vienna exhibition of the present year, 1873. It is an unwieldy, overdone thing, loaded with arabesques, fruits, flowers, musical instruments, cupids, and the like, too big, too heavy, fit neither for a mirror nor a picture, but quite wonderful as an effort of untaught genius. An ideal bust of Italia, also in wood, is full of sweet and subtle expression, and pleases me better than the frame. What possesses me that I should inquire the price of that bust? It is life-size, and weighs, heaven only knows how much it weighs, but certainly as much as all our scanty baggage put together. I have no sooner asked the unlucky question than, seeing the flash of hope in the poor fellow's face, I reproach myself for having done so. He only asks 200 lire for it, less than £8, but I could no more be burdened with it on such a journey than with the church steeple. So I ask for his card, and promising to bid my English friends look out for his frame next summer in Vienna, take my leave with the awkward consciousness of having said more than I intended. From Bragarezza the way lies between forest-clad hills up a constantly rising valley. The farther we go, the steeper and rougher the path becomes, the more desolate the valley, the more noisy the torrent. Then at last we have to dismount and let the mules scramble on alone. Now the Pelmo, as yesterday, comes suddenly into sight, its huge, tawny, snow-ridged battlements rising, close behind a near hillside, so close that it seems towering above our heads. And presently, for we are only just in time to see it clearly for a few minutes, a great white cloud sails slowly up from somewhere behind, wrapping the mountain round as with a mantle, so that we only catch flitting, fragmentary glimpses of it now and then through openings in the mist. Finally, Zoppe, a tiny brown village and white church perched high on a green mountain-side, looks down upon us from the top of a steep path full 400 feet above the valley. That little white church contains the Titian which is the glory of all this countryside. A long pull up the hill in broiling sunshine brings us at last to the houses and the church. The door stands open, and, followed by all the men out of a neighbouring wood-yard, we pass into the cool shade within. There, over the high altar, hangs the Titian, uncurtained, dusty, dulled by the taper smoke of centuries of masses. It is a small picture measuring about 4 feet by 3, and represents the Virgin and Child enthroned, supported by San Marco and San Girolamo, with Santa Anna sitting on the steps of the throne. It is, on the whole, a perplexing picture. The Madonna and Child, painted in the dry, hard style of the early German school, look as if they could not possibly have come from Titian's brush. The San Girolamo and Santa Anna scarcely rise above mediocrity, but the head and hands of San Marco are really fine, and go far to redeem the rest of the picture. The color, too, is rich and solid throughout. This altar-piece, painted, it is said, by order of one of the Palatini in 1526, is classed by Mr. Gilbert among the very few indubitable Titians yet preserved among the painter's native mountains. But notwithstanding its reputation, I find it difficult to believe that the great master painted much more than the head and hands of San Marco. The Parocco, hearing that there were strangers in the church, came presently to do the honours of his Titian. He was a fat, rosy, pleasant little priest, redolent of garlic, and attired in light blue shorts, a light blue waistcoat, grey worsted stockings, and a long black clerical coat, worn bottle green with age. He chattered away quite volubly, telling how Titian had once upon a time come up to Zoppe for villeggiatura in time of plague, and how he had then and there painted the picture by order of the aforesaid noble, who desired to place it in the church as a thank-offering. Also how it had hung there venerated and undisturbed for centuries, till the French came this way in the time of the first Napoleon, and threatened to rob the commune of their treasure. Whereupon the men of Zoppe made a wooden cylinder, and rolled the picture on it, and buried it in a box at the foot of a certain tree up in the forest. "And look," said the Parocco, "you may see the marks of the cylinder upon the canvas to this day. And we have the cylinder still, Signora, we have the cylinder still." I said something, I no longer remember what, to the effect that a genuine Titian was worth taking care of, and that the commune could not value it too highly. "Value it!" he repeated, bristling up rather unnecessarily. "Value it, Signora! Of course we value it. Many governments have offered to buy it. We could sell it for 3,000 gold ducats tomorrow, if we chose. Ebbene, we are only 600 souls up here in the Piaz. Our men are poor, all poor, contadini in summer, legnatori in winter, but no price will purchase our Titian." We afterwards learned that this public-spirited little Parocco had been a mighty chamois hunter in his youth, and one of the first to scale the fastnesses of the Pelmo. Now we leave Zoppe on its hillside and come down again into the valley, catching by the way some wonderful glimpses of strange peaks, peeping out through mist and cloud in the direction of Monte Sfiorina and the Primaggiore range. And now, after a brief halt in the shade of a clump of trees beside a spring, we go on again, descending all the way till we find ourselves back at Pieve di Zoldo, and alighting at the gate of a large white house, where we are welcomed by young Pezzi's sister, Signora Pellegrini. Now Signora Pellegrini has married a man both wealthy and well-descended, and lives in a large, plentiful, patriarchal way, much as our English gentry lived in the time of the Tudors. She carries her keys at her girdle, and herself superintends her dairy, her cows, her pigs, her poultry, and her kitchen. Being ushered up a spacious staircase, and across a landing hung with family portraits of Pellegrinis, who were once upon a time bishops, priors, captains, and powdered signors in ruffles and laced coats, we are shown into a reception-room where a table is laid for luncheon. The master of the house is unavoidably absent, being gone to a cattle fair at Longarone, but Cesare Pezzi takes his place at table, where everything is fresh, abundant, home-made, and delicious. After luncheon we go to see the church, a large structure with a fine Gothic nave, containing 2 or 3 curious early Italian pictures, and an important carved altar-piece by Andrea Brustolon, the Grinling Gibbons of South Tyrol, born in this valley of Zoldo in the year 1662. It is a quaint, strange subject, admirably executed, but not pleasant to look upon. They call it the Altare degli Animi, or Altar of the Two Souls. 2 figures intended to represent human suffering and human sorrow, each attended by a warning skeleton, support the entablature on each side. 2 angels and a Pietà crown it on the top. The execution is excellent, but the impression produced by the work is indefinitely painful. That evening we wander about the fields and lanes beyond the village, and the writer sketches some wild peaks, called by some the Monte Serrata, and by others the Monte Rochetta, which are seen from every point of view about the place. There is, of course, the customary difficulty of keeping intruders at bay. One old woman in wooden cloths, having looked on for a long time from her cottage door, comes hobbling out, and surveys the sketch with a ludicrous expression of bewilderment. "Why do you do that?" she asks, pointing with one skinny finger and peering up sidewise into my face like a raven. I answer that it is in order to remember the mountain when I shall be far away. "And will that make you remember it?" she says, incredulously. To this I reply that it will not only answer that purpose, but even serve to make it known to many of my friends who have never been here. This, however, is evidently more than she can believe. "And where do you come from?" she asks next, after a long pause. "From a country you have no doubt heard of many a time," I reply. "From England." "From England? Jesu Maria, from England! And where is England? Is it near Milan?" Being told that it is much more distant than Milan, and in quite the opposite direction, she is so confounded that she can only shake her head in silence and hobble back again. When she is halfway across the road, however, she stops short, pauses a moment to consider, and then comes back, armed with one last question. "Ecco," she says, "tell me this, tell me the truth. Why do you come here at all? Why do you travel?" To this I reply, of course, that we travel to see the country. "To see the country?" she repeats, clasping her withered hands. "Gran Dio! Have you, then, no mountains and no trees in England?" End of Section 32.